Welcome back. This is Pairs Well with Knitting. I'm Jennifer, and this is a knitting podcast all about, of course, knitting, yarny goodness, and travel while I take a year sabbatical. Thanks for joining me. You may have seen my last episode, which was the Nova Scotia Part 1 video, where I talked about all of the yarny adventures that I was able to take while in Nova Scotia and just around the outskirts of that. Today, because there was so much cozy adventures that I was able to do in Nova Scotia, this is a part 2. In today's video, I'm going to feature some content from Lunenburg, Mahone Bay, Chester, and Nova Scotia. Gorgeous province, amazing places. The way that I'm going to format the structure of the video will be similar to my part 1, which will be my finished objects, into my whips or works in progress, and then into some travel-y goodness with yarn and fiber acquisitions where I was able to visit fiber, and I'm saying fiber loosely, stores, not just yarn stores and studios. It was incredible. So thanks for joining me today. Let's get into it. Very first off, what I'm wearing. I am channeling the autumn vibe. It is feeling very fall-y in downtown Toronto, a little chilly even. In today's episode, what I am wearing. What I'm wearing is the sweater number 12 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This is a sweater with an interesting raglan shape. Not a traditional upper collar with a 1x1 ribbing, but instead follows an all-over texture work of a broken rib or fisherman's rib style. It has an interesting, really thick, I think it's like 11 count stitch raglan on the sleeves, and creates this very interesting shape, which I loved and applied to another sweater that I created that was inspired by this design. I knit this using 2 strands of one each of the Knitting for Olive Merino in the Hackiato color, which is obviously this super fun bright orange, and the other, of course, is in the soft silk mohair. It was an interesting knit. It was definitely, for me, something that I had to be a little minds on in the beginning of creating the raglan shaping. I did do a little muck up and didn't count the proper stitches, so had to do a big rip back, but that's all part of it. With this, I knit on a US 4, again, because I am a loose knitter, and followed the pattern. I'm looking at my notes, pretty spot on. I'm just looking here. I do, because I don't often knit with merino and softer, finer wools, that this did grow, of course, after blocking, but in doing so really allowed for that texture to, I think, come out and be displayed in the overall fabric that is made by the stitches. Love this sweater, love the design. I really always enjoy My Favorite Things knitwear, and this was the kickoff and inspiration for me to knit that green sweater that I had showed, I think, in my first episode in the spring, with, again, that thick raglan stitching, and then just kind of crafted my own thing. So this is a sweater number 12. We're gonna get into finished objects. My first finished object may have had a little preview in my last video of Nova Scotia Part 1 video, and now is getting its full time to shine. This is the Snowy Forest sweater designed by Midori Hirose. This is a heavy gauge, thick knit, quicker knit cable sweater yoke, where the yoke is 2 types of cables and then falls into a stock net stitch. Is recommended to be a potential great first cable sweater, and it was. I knit this in 2 strands held together of unspun Plötulopi Istex yarn in a colorway I did not know, because the yarn was gifted to me by a dear friend from San Francisco. I later came to find out, because I was playing some yarn chicken and got a little anxious about how much yarn I did have left to complete the project, I later found out that it was a black heather colorway. fabulous. It's an interesting yarn to work with, and because I am a loose knitter, I don't have issues knitting with an unspun yarn, especially when it's held double. The braid factor is very minimal for me. Where I would say the braid factor was a bit of a pain, and now I can understand for the tight knitting friends, was when I was sewing down my collar. I'll talk about the mods in a second, but when I was sewing down the collar, I was often having my strands broken and having to splice them back together again. Wasn't a big deal, but it was a little annoying, and it did make the process a little longer. As far as the sweater goes, it was such a delight to knit. I knit this while I was away in Nova Scotia primarily. And if you saw from other videos, I had cast on after the neckline, or the band I should say. So I cast on for the stitches called for. Then I followed those rapid increases to get the cabling quantity that's needed. There's two types of cables. I believe it's a horseshoe cable, which is the big one, and it increases as the yoke goes down. And then it's a simple 1x1 cable side by side with some purling to kind of make those cables pop. I did not do the increases for the 1x1 cables. I only did them for those horseshoe cables because I was finding she was being a bit big, a little monstrous, which was the look and the pattern. But I wanted to go for something a little more form-fitting. I got a little scared that it would be too snug, but I think we're okay, you know, as long as, yeah, I don't know what to say. It's great. I did a longer sleeve because I wanted that cozy factor. Really dig the sleeves because they actually fall just a little even further than my wrist, which usually I do bracelet length, so jazzed about that. I also added some short rows in the back, short row shaping. Wasn't in the pattern, but I had wanted to again have that higher neck at the back so the sweater would sit such that I was gonna be happy with it. I did a double folded collar, which I think the pattern called for, and did a knit down, which it might all have called for, but it was a great time. I'm just gonna see if there's anything else that I need to add about it, but I think that was it. In general, quite a bit smaller than the original pattern because the original pattern is quite boxy fit, and this is not. She's gonna be a dream to wear in cold weather. Obviously super cozy cozy, and another reason why I can't wear it today because I think I would just get super hot. So that is the Snowy Forest Sweater by Midori Hirose. Second finish object is party socks. These are socks that I made for the love of my life, a future gift for Christmas or birthday. So I'm feeling super ahead of the game. I showed one of the two in my last video. The other one whipped up just like bibbity bobbity, super quick. This is a pattern that I followed mostly from the Crazy Sock Lady. This is the Vanilla DK sock. I knit this in one strand of the Color Lab DK yarn, not sock yarn, by the West Yorkshire Spinners or Spinnery. It was noted to me that this is 100% yarn with no synthetic, so questionable about the wear of the sock. For the most part, I think we're good because because I do knit thicker socks with DK not fingering, these will be house socks. We'll see how the wear goes. They were a fun knit with the color, the self-striping that happened. This is a, what kind of heel is this called? I forget. It's a slip stitch heel, I think it's called, with a little heel turn action. Super simple, the pattern's free, and I've used this for all of my socks. I've tried another way. I tried a short, what's it called? Short row turned heel, but not so much, not for me, not yet. But maybe you'll see why, because I'm going to be talking about short rows in a moment or five. yeah, so I think he will enjoy these. These won't be super secret socks, but I think if I put them away, he will tend to forget about them, and then it will be a fun reminder surprise when they are gifted to him in the future. They're fun. They're gonna add a pop of color to the very crisp white shirt and dark jeans that he decides to wear, which is lovely. So these are a little fun pop for him and for me visually. I did the decreases on the toe a little differently from the pattern, usually because I don't have the pattern in front of me the whole time, so I do what feels right. So I decreased at the toe, I don't know if you need to know this, every other row up until I had 32 stitches instead of I think 20, then I decreased every row after that, and I do a Kitchener stitch to get the jazzy toe. It'll be great. Haven't blocked these yet. I don't even think I will. I think I will gift them as is and block them later so that they aren't fully on display before the gift of the giving season. Those are the party socks, the vanilla DK sock by Crazy Sock Lady. Next up, we have works in progress, and there are works in progress. I have fallen down the garment hole, which I'm adoring, and let's get into it. Oh, okay, so many things. So first off is the infamous now field sweater. This is, and I will just turn to make sure that I'm not missing out on info for you or me. This is the field sweater by Camilla Vad. This is a top-down, very textured yoke sweater where there are different lengths of grains that alternate between the different sections, or I should say like pattern repeats. Has been a treat to produce, to knit on. But if you want to give it a go, if you have started giving it a go already, you will understand you will need to have your pattern in front of you while creating the yoke. With this sweater, it is, I would say, detailed, and the stitches are detailed. There are times where you are doing very different things on very different rows. I'm not sure how to say it without giving the pattern away, of course. But I think, yes, it is definitely not a mindless knit. It is a minds-on knit. I enjoyed every second of it, and I still brought this to knit in the park with me while my pattern was open. This was definitely not a knit that I could do while chatting and being out with a friend or having a beverage with somebody, because I want to give them that full attention. I also want to give my sweater full attention. So she got my attention on this. Of course, once I passed the grains and the textured yoke into the stockinette part of the body, we're whipping along. This is, of course, you know, a TV knit now, which is great. I definitely feel at this point that this is going to grow a lot because of my choice of yarn, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So I'm not sure if I should have cast on less stitches for the neckline. I know I've seen various necklines on Ravelry, and I tend to enjoy a tighter, like more hugging neckline or neckband for me, but we'll see. It's a gorgeous knit. The design is fabulous, and it's been a dream. The yarn that I chose to knit with this was a yarn that I picked up in, you'll see us future videos still, of this. This is sheer, and this is a Merino Dorset blended wool, raised in Ohio. I'm just seeing this on the band, in the buttermilk. This is a DK weight, which the pattern calls for. It is just a squishy, drooly delight. I'm knitting this on a US 4, again, quite a bit smaller than the pattern, but pretty much got gauge on this one, so that's a party. And this I purchased from Harrisville Designs in New Hampshire. It's light. It's a no, hold on. Woolen spun. So it's airy and bouncy. And I think this is also part of the joy of knitting up these, the grains. They weren't difficult. The yarn is quite elastic. It's bendy, it's flexy, it goes with the flow of the needle and my hands. So as I said in my last video, I feel like a knitting ballerina. Absolutely true. Like I should probably get more of this to make all the sweaters with and all the garments, because it's just so, I'm so happy when I'm knitting with this yarn and on this design. It's a perfect combination. So this is the Field Sweater by Camilla Vad in sheer. Next up is something I cast on over the weekend, and it is a super heavy gauge. This is a weekend slipover, and I can't, there we are. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we've got needles hanging out at the bottom here. This is a weekend slipover by Petite Knit. This is a chunky knit. So this is, I'm holding 2 strands of yarn held together, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, on a US 8. So it's just going bibbity bobbity. This pattern, you may know, is knit from the back first down. I want to talk about the short row situation, but I feel I need to talk about the yarn first, and there's just so many things to gab on about. So one strand I chose is from the yarn shop that I visited in Mahone Bay. I'm showing you the band. They have a website. They don't have Instagram, and social media seems to be a little not present, but they do have a website. This is, they call it Artisan Yarns by the Dye Guy. I purchased this in Mahone Bay from Encompassing Designs. They're a rug hooking studio. I'm going to talk about all the details of that shop later, but super fun yarn. This is on the Briggs and Little Heritage base, so super Canadian. And then I paired it with the Tin Silk Mohair from Sandnes Garn, I believe, and it's color 1012, which I think is like an Arctic white. It's very not autumny, not autumnal, but I was feeling it. I'm still feeling the color, and I think having a slipover to put on top of, you know, blouses, shirts, that kind of thing as we get into fall, this is going to be a fun wear with still kind of a nod to summer, which I'm thrilled about. I'm going to talk about the short rows, and you're going to be like, oh my goodness, Jennifer, really? Okay, naughty, dirty little knitting secret. I have only ever been successful with wrap and turns. Wrap and turns are my short row of choice. They're not even perfect. My short row game is not a great game for me to play. I have tried the German short rows when I was first knitting my very first sweater 3 years ago, and could not do this to save my life. Found the wrap and turns, it looked okay, so I went with it. And that's what I've always done for every sweater, even sweaters and garments that call for any other short row, Japanese short rows, German short rows. I was like, nope, wrap and turn. I'll figure it out. I'll do the stitch like calculations. There we are. Long story short, I started casting on the Moby sweater. I'm not showing it because here's why. I literally cast on stitches, and then I start reading about the German short rows that are embedded with a cable pattern. I could not figure out how to do the calculations. So I matured a little in my knitting adventure. I paused. I did rip out the smidge that I had where I tried to do wrap and turns, but didn't have success, and sat down, fresh start, watched heaps of videos with German short rows. What was I thinking? She's not hard. I got them pretty much right away. I took my yarn, my silk mohair this guy, the fancy pants little like hand-dyed yarn, brought it to the lake, had my little like weekend slip over, which called for German short rows all in the back. So this is all German short rows back here to short row shape. And I got it. I had the video up. I did my little like turny turn action, picking up the double leg. You know what I'm talking about because you all do this. I just did this after 3 years and it worked out. Like, I've never done short rows that look as good. Is this my new short row choice? Probably. And I feel so good that I was able to do it and on a simple knit where like I'm able really to see how it all works up. And resolving those stitches was no big deal. That I'm going to be applying this to other knits, and then I feel more confident moving into the complicated knit of the Moby sweater because I really want to cast on this all over cable work sweater, especially inspired by my first cable sweater with the snowy forest. Oh my gosh, I can't believe what I was waiting for, but there we are. Back to the weekend slip over. There's lots of threads going on. So this is knit, again, what I was saying, from the back, and different increases are done. You pick up stitches along the shoulder lines, that's a hard word, and knit across, eventually getting to build your sweater after some more increases at the armpit, and then work in the round, connect your front and back. It's been super fun. I mean, it's an easy knit, which is great. Learned the German short rows, so that was a bonus. And yeah, we're sitting pretty with this. This is good. It's super fuzz, and what a fun colorway. No name on the colorway. It's a pastel colorway, so pretty cool. And I am playing yarn chicken. I bought 3 skeins of about 200 meters each of the hand-dyed yarn, thinking we'll be sweet. Like, I always have leftover yarn. I don't know. I already, when knitting up the neckline, I did a little rip back from the 9 centimeters that it tells you to knit to, and just to save on some yarn, but I'm not digging the neck. I still, as you may have seen, have to do the ribbing on the armholes and the body, and I still wanted to add length. This might not turn out as long and as like big as I wanted. We'll see. I don't know, we might have to get a little more creative as usual, but loving it and so proud of my short rows. I'm your girl now for German short rows. This is the weekend slip over by Petite Knit. Next, more works in progress. I'm just going to do a little this action. That is the same state of my Shetland Wool Week beanie that I have not touched. I'm into the garments right now. When I'm feeling jazzed, I'll get back to the hat. I felt like I should show it because I didn't show it for Nova Scotia part 1, so she got a little view in part 2. Next up is the sweater that's breaking the sweater curse. This is the sweater that I am knitting, the love of my life, also for Christmas or birthday. I'm probably going to be a little too excited to wait for birthdays because we share birthdays in February. This will probably be for Christmas, so socks will be for birthday. This is a sweater that is getting knit in something. I don't want to say it wrong because I think I said it wrong last time, and of course I don't have it open to the page. This is yarn that I purchased from the Cashmere Goat in Maine, in Camden, Maine, with the lovely ladies there. This is the natural sheep's wool, black sheep, from Door Yarn. I kept getting the name wrong, so my big apologies. And it's such a delightful yarn. You may remember that I knit the first sweater of this yarn in the Felix pullover by Savory Knitting, and cannot wait to wear it in the cooler weather. So I purchased a big boy size quantity of yarn, and we are doing my own thing with the sweater. This is a simple 1x1 ribbing on the neckline. Did a crochet cast on, which I don't know if I talk about this. This kind of cast on I learned when I was making my Amy slipover, and it's a different style of cast on, long tail cast on girl, forever. But because of knitting the ties for the ribbons for the Amy slipover on the side, you couldn't do a long tail cast on because it was already like you were joining section at the sleeves. I won't get into it that much, but basically you were forced to do this different cast on with a crochet hook. Gave it a go and really enjoyed it. Here's why I like it. Long tail cast on, I've got to cast on 3, 5, maybe more times because I keep estimating the wrong length of yarn. Even if I do a wrap to estimate, it's never right. With the crochet hook, you just have a regular like few inch tail that's hanging off of like a little slip knot, and you could like check it out on Google, check it out on YouTube. You use a crochet hook to keep adding on additional stitches onto your needle. So you can add on 10 stitches, you can add on 2,000 stitches. It's not going to, you can always keep going. You don't have to like pull it all out and start from scratch. This is what I've started doing with a lot of my new sweaters and things I've been making. There is a caveat with this. This is fine because I'm not picking up stitches. So this is a totally great option, I think, if you're willing to try it and check it out. Because if you're like me and you're having to do the cast-ons multiple times, give it a shot. I would suggest though, if you're doing a pickup stitches, which I did with my Snowy Forest, I did do the crochet cast on where I thought it was like a knitting genius, and I'm like, this is so smart. Not so much, because when I was picking up my stitches at the neckline, it was harder to see the cast on edge, if that makes sense. Like each stitch wasn't, from what I've been able to read with the stitches, it was more challenging. It was doable, but took quite a bit longer to figure out where I had to pick up my stitches. Just a word of warning. Back to the sweater that is breaking the sweater curse. This, if you remember, I did lifted increases, and it's so dark you probably can't. Oh, there. Lifted increases to kind of minimize like holy bits and gaps between the increases at the sleeve and the raglan. And she's growing. He's growing. Is it a he if it's for my love? I don't know. So yeah, it's been fun to knit. All the sheepy goodness. This is awesome. I've been inspired back to color, I think, because I've knit a couple dark things lately. But he'll get some love. I am concerned, if I may share, about the size that I did for the sleeve hole. I cast on, I think, too many stitches at the underarm. I've had my love try on the sweater a couple times, and he's convincing me. He's like, this is great, this is great. I feel like it's a little big. We'll see. So I think when I go to pick up those stitches, well, when I'm doing the sleeve, I might cheat and like catch like every 3 out of 4 stitches, because I still think it's gonna be a little large. Anyway, that's the sweater that's breaking the sweater curse. Freestyling in the sheep's black door yard yarn. There we are. Okay. All right, getting into some of the travel now and acquisitions that I was able to get my hands on while away in the second half of Nova Scotia. So we left the Halifax area and went into Chester, Nova Scotia, which was our first stop. And we had lunch at the Kiwi Cafe. The Kiwi Cafe was a really cute cafe on the main drag of Chester. Again, this is a town village on the water that is just gorgeous, smells of the ocean, lovely people around. The Kiwi Cafe, I was told, was owned by a Kiwi, a New Zealander. And ironically, the word was that she was from Auckland, New Zealand. I lived in Auckland, New Zealand for a year. So this hit my heart, and this is why we had to go to the Kiwi Cafe. The Kiwi Cafe hosted not only little fun Kiwis everywhere, but had a nod to New Zealand with the Whitaker's chocolate and other little bits and bobs that included licorice. So it was a fun piece of nostalgia to be there. It was lovely. So that was the Kiwi Cafe. We then went along into Mahone Bay and then had the majority of our stay at this time in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. Mahone Bay is a gorgeous also village that you can spend the day or longer doing with beautiful shops, very arts and craftsy, very hands-on and creative vibe was there. So that was lovely. We did a bakery while there. We went to a bakery. It was the boulangerie that was around the corner outside of the main drag. And we went at the end of the day, and the folks were lovely at the bakery. The baked goods were delightful, and they were the ones that told us about a farmer's market that they were going to be at the next day. So I will tell you about the farmer's market in a moment, but their baked goods were a delight, very tasty. So if I may, get into the Lunenburg, and then we'll get into the farmer's market because there's just so many things. Lunenburg was the biggest of 3 of these towns that we went to, and I'm calling them towns. I hope that's what they're called. I'm not sure. So the biggest out of the Chester, Mahone Bay, and now Lunenburg. The Lunenburg is noted for many things. I think a beautiful cultural experience of Eastern coastal culture, creative artisans, but as well the Blue Nose and the Blue Nose 2. The Blue Nose 2 is hosted in the port of Lunenburg. It often is there, but it seems that I was looking at a schedule that the Blue Nose actually, which I don't know if you know, the Blue Nose is a schooner, a tall ship, that the first Blue Nose won a bunch of races, ship races. I'm not a sailor, so my deepest apologies. The Blue Nose 2 now does sail to other areas of Nova Scotia, and I believe parts of Canada, but not too far. Apparently there were issues with, I think, the tall mast ships, and that not all ports are able to have these kinds of ships in them. It's a beautiful piece of Lunenburg, and it definitely gives that kind of breath of yesteryear, which is cool, with sailing. It was beautiful to see. We didn't go on a tour with it or on that boat, but it was beautiful to look at, very nice. In Lunenburg, we did heaps of other activities. So we stayed along the main drag where our back window, actually, we could see the ocean, which was a delight. However, we did hit Lunenburg in a fairly wet time, which was fine for us, not fine, I think, for the locals. We were there during the absolute downpour of storms that they had that resulted in flooding and washing out of roads and bridges, where many things were closed and people were, basements were flooded, businesses had to be closed. So it was, I'm assuming, a very challenging time for the Lunenburg and surrounding areas community. So I hope everyone is well now, but it was rain like I've never seen rain before. The tap turned on and gushed from the sky for 24 hours. It was a lot. On the note of the little nibbles and sips that we did around Lunenburg. We attended the Knot Pub. The Knot Pub is at the very, you could say, tip of the entry point of Lunenburg. It's a traditional pub, everything you kind of want, with that smell of like wood and old beer as you walk in. And that was always a great time. The servers were lovely. It had such a great feel to it. I'm a pub girl, and yeah, it was super fun and delicious. Every morning I treated myself to the number 9 coffee bar that was on the main drag, and had a delicious coffee, which I was so thrilled about, from creating my AeroPress, you know, kind of Americanos from our Airbnb, which was an attempt at okay coffee, but the number 9 coffee bar, they knew how to pull really decent coffee, and they had great baked goods. And the girls were a delight there. We also attended or went to the Lightship Brewery. This brewery is located on the other side of the harbor of Lunenburg, where on a nice day, not the day that we had of downpour, but you can sit out and watch and view the vista of Lunenburg, which is that really traditional, or what we think is iconic, view of Lunenburg, of all the different color houses. We were inside. There was a lot of indoor seating, and we had some delicious sudsy drinks and some seafood accompaniment. So that was super fun. Then traveled outside of Lunenburg area, and we went, we just enjoyed the views driving around. We stopped off at Hirose Beach and walked along the beach there. It was beautiful. I cannot believe our country has the beauty that we do. The beach was beautiful, sand with mixed rock or stone that had been worn down by the ocean, so it was smooth to walk on even with bare feet. The water was different colors of blue, almost aqua, almost like Caribbean looking water, but absolutely a million times colder. I never went in. I dipped my toe, and that was about all we were doing, and that was fine. So beautiful, beautiful beaches there. Okay, I'm gonna get into the farmer's market. I'm going to get into the yarn shops. There's just so many things. So farmer's market. We attended the farmer's market in Lunenburg. These are hosted on Thursdays in Lunenburg, every Thursday. And this was by far the biggest farmer's market that we actually attended in Nova Scotia. My love dropped me off, and I just had the best time looking around, walking around, and chatting with the people and eating all the things. So of course I picked up a baked good from the bakery we had gone to the other day. That was hosted at the venue. The venue is in an arena. So even though I'm from a small hockey town, I think I've been in an arena a handful of times, and happy to say that there was no hockey going on, that it was a farmer's market instead. At the farmer's market, walking around, had a great time seeing, touching, feeling, and enjoying everything. And then of course chatting with all the people. One of the first places that I bought items from and had a great chat was the Lismore Sheep Farm Wool Shop ladies. This is a sheep farm that's located in Lismore, which was about, I think, a 2 and a half drive away. So it was great that I felt like I didn't have to go all the way there, that essentially they came to me at the market. And they had a number of woolly items, from gorgeous woven blankets to yarn. They didn't have a lot of different yarn on site. I don't think they thought they were going to get a lot of knitters like this girl. Yeah, little like dryer balls, super fun. I ended up purchasing from them, sorry for the bag noises, this is a Thrum Mitt kit. This is very Canadiana, and I don't know if other, countries have these kinds of mitts, but I think this is very like East Canadian, especially like Newfoundland based mittens. So these mitts, which I've never made before, I believe are a basic mitt for the hand and a thumb, like a thumb gusset, but then you basically knit through fiber. So the kit that I purchased that has the pattern, I have a yarn from the farm, from the Lismore farms, but then it's also a fiber. So you pull, my understanding is, bits of the fiber and basically knit it through. What it does is not only does it look beautiful, but it adds a lot of volume to trap the heat for your hand in the winter. So they're supposed to be very cozy. I'm so excited to knit the thrum mitt. I think they're going to be super fun. So that was my first purchase, and at that the market, hosting that stall was Jillian, who was the owner, and she had her friend Joan. Her friend Joan with her woke up at like 4 in the morning to drive to the market to help her host her stall, which I thought was just so lovely. Had the best time chatting with those two. Moving on, I then at the market went to this. This was a stall by Nautically Repurposed. This was a lovely lady, Nancy, that prepares and recycles, reuses old fishing and lobster rope into useful objects. So this is a basket that she's designed and created out of old lobster ropes. The story is that the lobster ropes or the fishing ropes have longevity, where the fishermen can use the ropes to catch the things that they're catching. I guess over time and where the ropes are no longer good to rely on to catch the things in the ocean. So they swap out, they get new rope. And then what do you do with the old rope? Well, our dear friend Nancy from Nautically Repurposed, she makes these beautiful little objects. So this has served as, I can't really show you, but like a little collections thing for my nitty accessories. She lives on our table right now. I feel the color is just so fun. It's definitely my color. And I may have purchased one for someone else that I can't show because it's a secret. I was in love. She also had coasters and all kinds of other great things. And I just thought how great that these are being used and reused, and also serves as such a great memory of Lunenburg. So that was the Nautically Repurposed. And also found at the market. Am I missing anything else from the market? My apologies, I had to go get the cards. So I bought cards at the market from the Blue Rocks Card Factory. This was an independent maker, an artisan, if you will, that prepares these fabulous prints that are just a delight, that all are very Nova Scotia, very East, so creative, and each print is a little different because I believe these are printed a number of times, so you're getting kind of a different saturation of print on the cards, and I just think they're gorgeous. So that is the Blue Rocks Card Factory. Our time in Lunenburg was just so lovely, and of course could not be forgotten without mentioning and glowing on about the yarn shops that we visited. Our first yarn shop that we visited was this yarn shop. It is the Wool Works that's located just outside of Mahone Bay as you approach or leave Chester into Mahone Bay. This is a yarn shop by Heidi, and it is a colorful delight. You walk in, it's an independent building, so not attached to other buildings, and it just has such a gorgeous crafter's feel. She has organized the front end of the shop, if you will, with fabrics. Tons and tons of gorgeous prints, bold colors, one after the next, and organized within color families. It was a delight for the eyes from the get-go. If you are a sewer or quilter, this would absolutely be your heaven of fabric. This is at the Wool Works. As you pressed on into more of the studio or space, it became more yarny. And so there were other yarns that were carried by Heidi that were name brands that I knew, including the Briggs & Little, but she also did her own hand-dyed. I picked up two, and this was probably my favorite. A very fun neon pink colorway with little bops of almost purples in them. It was so fun. I thought, okay, I have to get at least one. Of course, I ended up getting a whole sweater quantity of this. This is the Heidi by hand, again, still from the Wool Works. This is a hand-dyed Down East woolly wool. It's 100% wool, and I love 100% Canadian, like just fabulous. It's 100 grams, so we're looking at about 200 yards, and yeah, it's lovely. Heidi is Heidi Wolfrat, and she had so many lovely colors, a lot of artisanal colors, but I was feeling loud and bright when I had visited, so that was the inspiration for this sweater quantity of this. It's going to be a super fun knit. I got a little calmer one. This was in a natural gray and like still super sheepy smelling. Again, she didn't dye. Sometimes she dyes over this color, but I actually really enjoyed the natural. It's got a very like woolly feel, and so fun, so good. That was the Heidi's hand-dyed yarn at the Wool Works. Later on in Lunenburg, before we get to Lunenburg, we went to Mahone Bay. Mahone Bay, this was the end of the day, so we were getting tired after all the other activities, but we stopped off at the Encompassing Designs rug hooking studio. I was very quick at this place. We spent, I'd say, at least an hour and a half at the Wool Works. So my love was a little tired, and so he was waiting in the car at this point. I had purchased, this was for my weekend slipover, this guy, the Artisan Yarn by the Dye Guy. This was a very cool yarn shop, rug hooking studio, full of all the items that you could ever dream of, I'm sure, for rug hooking, which I'm not, and maybe one day I would love to. They also had a lot of wool fabrics, where you could sew your own fabulous clothing. Harris tweed, I think, is from Scotland. They had a lot of that, which was cool. Again, this was in like a 5-second peruse, and then they had these hand-dyed yarn skeins. So the yarn I chose, and this again, I'll just pop it in, is the sweater that I'm knitting, the weekend slipover, and it's just like a silly, fun pastel color. It didn't have a name on it, but the cool thing was that the dye guy was dyeing at the time on like a home cooking stove. When I was there, I saw him like dunking in skeins of yarn, so that was pretty cool. This is on the Briggs & Little base, so it's not something very fancy, but I do enjoy that it's got the Canadian piece, and the cost is significantly more than purchasing a Briggs & Little yarn but I'm not hand dyeing anytime soon. So I'm very happy to pay someone that has the skills and the space to do it, and purchase them. So that's lovely. That was the Encompassing Designs Rug Hooking Studio. And the last stop for Yarny Goodness was in Lunenburg at the Mariner's Daughter. This is a gorgeous small local yarn store in Lunenburg. This store is owned by Hannah, who I met, or Hannah, and her daughter Faye was working there at the time I was in there. This is a gorgeous yarn shop that just has all the right feels. Very cozy, well thought out, beautifully organized with the different displays and how they've positioned yarn and the samples. At this point, after buying quite a bit of yarn, I was overwhelmed. My purchase was to stay true to Canadian yarn, even though this wasn't very local compared to the others. I purchased 3 skeins of this. This is the Custom Woolen Mills Limited yarn from Canada. This is the Mule Spinner yarns, and it's a 100% natural wool grown and processed in Canada, which I love. This is from Alberta, Carstairs, Alberta. It's a pretty chunky yarn, a beautiful, I'm assuming natural colorway. And I'm thinking maybe a little shawl for this guy. We'll see. But they were super lovely there. And so lovely, in fact, that they helped me choose and determine what colorway I needed to bump up my quantity of Plötulopi for my snowy forest. This was at a time when I was knitting heavily on it and thinking I didn't have enough yarn to finish off my sweater. We did a little rough color match and determined it was the Black Heatherway. I bought 2 additional plates of the Plötulopi from them. I didn't even need it, but it's okay. It's gonna be something else delightful. Maybe a shawl, maybe into mittens, but it just allowed me to feel less anxious about moving forward and leaving the Mariner's Daughter and leaving Lunenburg, because where we were about to go was a little more remote. So big thank you to these lovely ladies, Mariner's Daughter. At this point of going over all of the finished objects, the works in progress, and bringing you through with me of the second half and part 2 of Nova Scotia, I would love to thank all of the wonderful makers, the fiber artists, the yarn shop owners and crafters that I met along the way from Chester, Mahone Bay, and Lunenburg. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to people at the farmers market that spent time chatting and answering all the questions. Thank you to the people of the communities that I met and was able to sip coffee with and chat to. And also a big thank you to you for coming in today to listen and being here with me. I super appreciate it. And I realize that there is just so many things that I love sharing with you that I am continuing on with the podcast journey. Up next will be the final round of our Down East adventures with New Brunswick and finishing off in the United States again. I cannot wait to film that. There's more yarny goodness coming your way from my way. So from Pairswell with Knitting, thank you. I hope you find joy in your knitting today, and we shall see you soon. Take care. Okay, big thunderstorms here in Nova Scotia. It's been raining on and off all day. I left some yarn in the car that I really want to show the podcast. It's not letting up. I'm just gonna do it. Look at this. Downpour. Making the voyage and trying to cover the phone so it doesn't get wet. This is insane. Okay, we got it. I don't know, this is crazy. I almost melted.